You might think that this is just a meaningless sound. And I understand why. It sounds just like a normal animal noise. But this animal noise is saving hundreds of animals each year. And it's not the whole story. They had an exchange with a whale. And she's using AI to ask an even bigger question. Can we decode dolphin communication? Talking with animals is going to be extremely hard, but it doesn't feel impossible anymore. So this is how we are learning to speak with animals. I went to the Baltic Sea to speak with Boris Culik because
I developed a system that alerts harbor porpoises in their own language.
in their own language, porpoises are relatives of dolphins, and they have a big problem. They can't detect fishing nets. They hit the net, turn around in panic, get entangled, and it's a game over. They run out of air, they drone, they die. And thousands of porpoises die like that each year. So just imagine how awesome it would be if we can tell the porpoises to be careful next to fishing nets. This sound in porpoise language means something like get away. We know this because Boris Culik's colleagues in Denmark observed porpoises at their aquarium.
They did a study investigating harbor porpoise communication sounds, and via video they observed how the recipient of the signal reacts. And so basically 10 elements of their language were identified.
One of those 10 signals is the getaway signal. And we know that because they saw that when one porpoise makes this sound, the other porpoise turns around and flees. So we invented a PAL device, Porpoise Alert, and it's using this alert signal to warn porpoises away from fishing nets.
And so this device actually tells harbor porpoises to get out of the way in their own language.
And this device is simply wonderful, because when it was tested, the results were extraordinary. 18 versus 5, a massive decrease in bycatch. We spoke to another species in their own language, they understood it, and we saved their lives with it. One giant leap. So mission accomplished, right? Let's go drink something. Well, not exactly.
So with the same signal and the same device, we went to Iceland and tested it there.
But the results were weird. There was no reduction in the bycatch, and
In the nets with the PAL, there were only males. Whereas in the nets without the PAL, there were males, females, and youngsters. And it led us to believe that, yes, they speak a different language in Iceland. The signal that tells you in the Baltic Sea, get out of the way, means for Icelandic harbor porpoises, get out of the way or I'll hit you between the eyes or something, and then the males get aggressive.
okay, tell me it's not one of the coolest things you've heard in your life. Like humans, languages of animals are local. This case clearly shows that animals have rich, nuanced communication systems. Okay, this was a case of us speaking to an animal. But can animals also speak to us? This dog Bunny is one case, which blew my mind. She can communicate through those soundboards. The concept is simple. Each button plays a word.
Okay. Medicine. Now.
With this soundboard, Bunny can actually speak to a human. It can bring very cute moments like this one.
Nope. Mom was not dog.
But also completely fascinating situations like this one. Look what happened after the owner told Bunny she has to go for several hours.
What do you think, baby? Did I forget morning? I did forget morning medicine.
Wow! At first I thought it was entirely conditioning, but now I see that she's combining concepts to make a very complex request. This case is so intriguing that researchers actually tested it at scale. They found out that dogs are combining words intentionally. Look at the connections between the button's own name, the dog's name, in our case Bunny, and person-parent, which is the name of the parent of the dog's owner. See that yellow line? It means this combination happens way more often than random. The dogs are probably calling the parents of the owner to visit them, which is so cute. But here's the main problem with those boards. Instead of us speaking animal language, the buttons force the dog to speak human language. If we really want to understand animals, we need to decode their methods. Barks, whistles, rumbles. So we have a much more complex goal now, to decipher what animals are saying in their own language. And it's gonna be really complex. Think about it. Our only way to learn animal communication is to match their sound to their behavior. And it's really hard because
Where are you going to obtain a communication signal unless you have an aquarium with 4 animals speaking the same language, living in the same water body, and you have scientists who are able to record their communication sounds and record how they react by filming and analyzing all that?
if you have no animals in captivity, you must get data from field trips, and each one takes a substantial amount of time. And you need a lot of data. And even then, different groups will have different dialect, like in the porpoise case. The point is that learning the language of animals is going to be an immense challenge, and it's going to take time. But despite all challenges, you can be happy, because we found at least some meaning in the communication systems of animals. The first thing we discovered is that some animals have those signature calls. Each call belongs to a specific individual. You can think about it like a name. A name. Now we know that elephants, dolphins, and whales use those name-like calls. In her great book, dolphin researcher Denise Herzing talks about her early research days when she still didn't understand dolphin etiquette. At one point, she broadcasted the dolphin's name. Almost immediately, the crew of the dolphin came to the speaker. In another case, she broadcasted the signature of a male dolphin named Stubby, who was mostly friendly.
After I played his whistle, Stubby immediately gave me a threatening, open-mouthed gesture as he swam by me.
And then he did the same to the underwater speaker before he swam away. I was horrified at his reaction. Clearly, I didn't know everything about what playing a dolphin's signature whistle meant to the dolphins, or what the proper etiquette was. So I decided to stop playbacks in the water.
Super interesting! So some part of animal communication can be an identifier. Another thing we discovered is that animal communication also contains information. Take vervet monkeys. When they see a predator, they have to hide, and we discovered that they use different calls for different predators. Which makes sense. A leopard sound tells the monkeys to hide high in the trees. An eagle sound tells them to hide low in the bushes. Different sound, different survival strategy. Prairie dogs also encode information in their calls. It's a really weird animal, because they are called dogs, but they are actually squirrels. Humans treat them as pests and hunt them. Studies show that their calls are so specific that they can distinguish the size of a human and the color of their clothes. In their own language, they can communicate, "Here comes the good-looking, medium-height guy with the black shirt." Well, I added the good-looking part, but everything else is scientific. Okay, so with that in mind, I have to ask, is it actually possible to have a conversation with an animal in their own language? Those researchers have managed to have some kind of a conversation with this whale for 20 minutes, which made many headlines. Humpback whales have these whoop signals. It's a contact call, and often when one whale makes it, other whales reply with the same call. Something like, "Hey buddy, hey buddy." Scientists send this whoop call, and a whale called Twain engaged. She replied with a whoop call and a conversation started. For 20 minutes, the scientists and Twain went back and forth sending this whoop call. There is no doubt that this conversation must have been really enriching and exciting for the whale.
I am. Well, that's just as fascinating as the first 89 times you told me that. What is wrong with Giving Tree here?
Okay, but jokes aside, it's actually quite normal for whales to use a lot of whoop calls. They can sometimes do more than 30 whoop calls in less than 10 minutes. It's hard for me to call it a conversation because it was only those whoop calls. But it does imply that a conversation would be possible in principle if we knew more vocabulary. But how can we discover vocabulary efficiently? The research she is doing might give us the answer. I already mentioned Denise Herzing, probably the coolest person in every party she goes to, because her job is to dive and communicate with dolphins in the Bahamas. Her mission is to decode dolphin communication and enable two-way communication between our species. And to realize her dream, she is collecting videos and sounds of dolphins for more than 40 years. And now she has the best tool to find patterns in this data. Just like ChatGPT learned English, similar AI models might help us decode the language of dolphins. So Denise Herzing and her team developed Dolphin Gemma, ChatGPT for dolphin whistles. Give Dolphin Gemma the start of a whistle and it predicts how it continues, revealing which whistles tend to follow which. Imagine we did it with English. If I feed the model good morning, it would tend to predict words that show up in positive context. So now I know that the word good is related to words like sunshine, beautiful, friend, and Vietnam apparently. And similarly, the word bad is related to negative words. Dolphin Gemma helps you discover which signals are related even before you know what they mean. It's great in making associations, but there is one main problem here. If I don't know the meaning of good or bad, I can't know the tendency of the group. So we have to find a way to understand the meaning of individual whistles. Like we said earlier, Denise and her team must rely on the context. What the dolphins were doing when they made a certain sound. Which is why they built another AI model, clustering. So you can imagine that 40 years of data probably look like that computer desktop of that one person you know. Files everywhere, total chaos, finding a pattern is impossible. But clustering fixes that. It's an algorithm that groups elements based on how similar they are. We can use clustering to group similar shapes or to group similar sounds, like dolphin sounds. So the idea is to group dolphin sounds and then see whether similar sounds are associated with similar dolphin activities. If the dolphins always make similar sounds during mating, those sounds might be an attraction call. But if we see the same sounds also between mother and a calf, it might be a bonding signal instead. So the idea is to first find the meaning of singular sounds through the clustering algorithm, and then to find a relation to other sounds with Dolphin Gemma. This is how you start translating a language. Both AI models are quite new, and I'm really curious to see what they're going to discover. And all I can think about in the meantime is how cool it would be to speak to another species. So keep dreaming and keep creating. Love you!